It's painful and confusing to keep going back to the person who has hurt you the most. I know because I've done it. After I filed for divorce, we ended up seeing each other again just months later, and I ended up back in my marriage. It took a year after that, but we were back living life together, and once I got stuck back in that lifestyle, I wanted to prove my family members wrong, and I didn't want to be divorced a second time. The other marriage is a story for another time, but I wanted to believe that the change was real, that he really was doing all the things that he said, but it wasn't real. And if you're caught in the same cycle, then this video is for you. Why do we go back even when we know better? There are many reasons, some of them deeply psychological. There's that trauma bond that we have that's really hard to break. And, you're also thinking, like, why do I want to blow up life right now for myself and my kids? It would be so much easier if we could just keep things the way they are. I can't afford to get divorced right now, or I just want him to see how much I'm hurting and finally change. We believe that person will change for us at some point. We believe that they deeply love us and they are going to make the changes that they need to make. And these are very human thoughts. You're not crazy. You're not weak. You're trauma bonded, just like I was. Abuse happens in cycles. There's the tension, and you know that part of the abuse cycle because that's where you hear them sigh, you hear them slam a door, you hear them pull up in the driveway, and you just know, your body knows that something is coming. You don't know when, you don't know what's going to happen, but you can feel something is about to happen. And then there's the giant explosion. That's where they're raging at you. That's where they are possibly throwing things. There may be physical abuse. There may be sexual abuse, emotional abuse. They're name calling. I didn't have that in my personal relationship. In my relationship, it was more of raging. And, he would wake me up late into the night and be raging at me about money or something. Just talking at me for so long. And, if I would try to defend myself or jump in, he would say, "Don't interrupt me." So I felt like I wasn't able to talk. That was my explosion. It was so painful because I wasn't getting enough sleep. I was not sure how to make him understand me. So I'm sure you've felt that. If you've ever been in any kind of abusive situation, you felt the tension, you felt the explosion. Next is the reconciliation. The reconciliation is when they possibly apologize, usually not, but sometimes my abuser apologized, and then, things would go on as normal. We would just forget about the whole thing, and it was back to the kindness, being lovey, that kind of thing. So that's the calm part of the abuse cycle. So there's the tension, explosion, reconciliation, and then the calm. And what people like me, my old self, didn't understand was that it doesn't feel terrible in most of the cycle. The only terrible part is really, you could argue that the tension part is painful, yes. But the really terrible part was the explosion. That's the part that causes the confusion and the, what is going on with my relationship? This person hates me. So the kindness that you're craving is actually part of the abuse cycle, and you'll get it in that reconciliation and calmness part. Briefly sometimes, but you're just accepting crumbs at this point because you're looking for that person that you fell in love with again. Where did they go? This evil person that seems to hate you has come in their place. So you're trained to feel that relief after the storm. And that's not really peace. It feels like it sometimes, but it's not really peace. It's just survival. You are surviving your relationship. And like I said, waiting for the good version of him to return, that Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. But it's all a performance, the whole thing, not just the angry parts, but the happy parts. Probably the angry parts are the parts that are the true him, where the mask is slipping. So when you get the reconciliation, the kindness, the generous acts, those are really just an act. If this video is speaking to you and you're stuck in a cycle like this, then I created a program for people like us that are going through toxic relationships or have been through one. It's called Becoming Conscious. It's my 12-week program. It has group coaching and there are videos, lots of exercises that will help you realize these cycles of abuse and what you're going through, help you rebuild trust in yourself and move forward with clarity so you can get back to finding peace and joy in your life. So you can learn more at the link. I'll leave it in the description below. Next is the sunk cost fallacy. And that is where you have given so much to this relationship, years of your life, a home, a lifestyle, maybe even your career. I know many of my clients have given up their career for this relationship. And I guess I did somewhat in a way. I went to part-time teaching for a while. It's just thinking about giving up this whole lifestyle that you've created. You know, you identify as a married person or a person in a relationship, and to just destroy all that seems so difficult to do. And you think, I've invested too much, I can't leave now. My kids are settled, they like the school that they go to. I'll just wait until it gets better. You know, you kind of think, okay, we had a bad day yesterday, but today is pretty good. And tomorrow will be pretty good. And then one day you find yourself like me marking dates off on the calendar of when he has these explosions, and you realize it's coming like every 2 weeks, or it got to be even sooner, closer together in my relationship. So, you know, as you stay, the hole only gets deeper and deeper that you're living in. You lose more and more of yourself. Your health keeps getting worse because you're holding on to all this tension and strain in your life. Your cortisol levels are through the roof, and your inflammation in your body is crazy. I had all kinds of things like plantar fasciitis. I had stomach problems. I went on a whole journey of changing my diet because I was just a mess. And I just thought, oh, it has to be the food I'm eating or something like that. Next is the illusion of hope. He makes just enough effort to keep you believing that he's going to get a raise soon and things are going to be better financially and this stress will be over. Or he promises that you're going to move into a better house. You're going to go to a bigger house that's going to fit all the kids and pets and whatever. You know, you're just thinking like, we're going to move to a better part of town or whatever those promises are. He may bring up things that he's doing to help him, you know, grow and change, build personal development, but he's really probably not doing those things or not taking them seriously, but he'll bring them up enough that you think, oh, he's really taking this seriously. He's looking into these things. Maybe he even went to counseling a few times. And that's kind of what happened to me. He found a better job. He promised to quit drinking. He appeared to quit drinking. He, got a better job, promised to quit drinking, and he went to counseling. And he wanted to go to counseling with me, which at the time I thought that's really awesome. We're going to really work on our relationship. He's excited about it. But what I didn't know is that's a whole tactic in itself when they get you to go to couples counseling, because what ends up happening is they either say that the counselor is terrible, they don't know what they're doing, or they get the counselor on their side and get them to join in on blaming you and making you the problem, or they just quit going and they say, counseling is stupid, I just don't like it, I'll look into something else, there's another, I can read this book. So counseling doesn't last very long usually, couples counseling. Well, counseling for them. You will put in the effort and do the counseling, but your narcissistic partner will not. Okay, and then another thing that happens that you keep going back to the narcissist is because you don't have a plan for what you're going to do afterwards. And that's okay, we can fix that problem. But, you don't know who you're going to go stay with. You don't know where you're going to live. You may not know how you're going to make money. You don't know, what will happen with the kids or the pets. I know a lot of people that haven't left because they're worried about what will happen with the dogs. So if you have kids, you know that that's an even more difficult situation. So what you can do is start making a plan right now and ask yourself, where could you stay temporarily? Is there a family member or friend that would be willing to take you in and support you through leaving? I know in my own case, I had family members that were so anxious for me to leave. They would have done anything probably that I needed. Luckily, I was the one that was able to stay in my house because I owned it before our marriage. But the other question is how to save money quietly. And I've had clients that say, well, if I'm putting money away secretly, isn't that dishonest, just like the narcissist? And what I tell them is no, because your intention is not to hurt another person or deceive them by stealing their money. Your intention is to save yourself and save your children if you have them. So it is being dishonest, but it's being dishonest for a very good reason. It's a safety issue. Who could help with childcare or listen when you need to vent? So do you have a person like that in your life? Do you have someone that will listen to you talk about this relationship over and over? Because I find that's what so many people need, especially when they're trying to break that trauma bond. Some of my clients need constant back and forth texting with me. And some of my clients needed to have somebody to talk on the phone with, which, with the coach, that's difficult to get. But I had a family member that was willing to talk to me for hours about this problem, and it really helped me. I also had friends and a support group and coaches that I worked with. So, just know that you don't need to have all the answers right now, but you can start thinking about those things before you are ready to leave. And you're looking at the support system, you're probably going to need more than one person because, it can get tiring for that one person to talk about everything that you need to talk about all the time. A coach or a therapist can really help. Then also have that safe friend or family member, and find a support group who gets it, who's been there where you are and they have broken away or they're in the same process as you, because you're really going to need that extra support. And I had all three, and that's how I made it through. That's how I made it out. Okay. One of the things that I want to reassure you about is the shame that you're feeling of going back again. Even if you didn't physically leave, but you've, had these times where you thought, I've got to get out. And then, things blow over and you go back and things seem to feel kind of normal for a while. Don't take on that shame, because narcissists love to use shame as a weapon. But you don't have anything to be ashamed of, because you went back because you're kind, you're hopeful, You're trauma bonded, not because you're broken. You didn't do anything wrong. Use every time you return to them as information. It's not failure, it's feedback. So what I want you to take away from this video is that you are not weak for staying. You are not foolish for believing this person. Like, he's had years of practice. He has manipulated more people than you. Trust me, it's like all throughout his whole life. He has practiced manipulating people. He knows what will get people hooked and what will keep them with him for as long as he wants. You're worthy of a life without fear and confusion. You don't have to live this way. You can break this cycle for good. And if you want support doing that, think about joining my group program, Becoming Conscious. We're starting on July 7th. And you know, if for some reason you don't catch it in time, you can still join afterwards for like a week afterwards, because, you know, you may miss the first call, but there's going to be a replay. So click the link and join us. And I know there are more fears that you probably have that I haven't gone over. So let me know in the comments, what is something that you worry about when you leave the narcissist? Is there something that I didn't list? You know, maybe it's that your whole lives are entangled. I had one client who, her husband worked for the family business. And so, you know, it was disentangling the whole family from this person. And that was really difficult. So if you stayed to the end, thank you for watching. And let me know if there are any subjects on narcissism or narcissistic partners that you would love for me to cover in the future, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.